Dexter rarely made meaningful connections with other people. He only truly cared for a few people in his life, one of them being his wife, Rita Bennett. Unfortunately for him, Rita was eventually killed by Arthur Mitchell, the Trinity killer. But what would have happened if Rita was never killed by Trinity? Today, let's answer that exact question. The first thing to look at is that Rita seemed to be the perfect partner for Dexter.
We'll get you into a program. We'll get you the help you need.
She was sweet, naive, trusting, and in need of protection. She also had 2 kids from her previous marriage, and Dexter always cared about kids. He wanted all of them to be safe and happy. Over time, it became clear that even though Dexter began the relationship to help create a cover life for himself, he actually started to care for Rita. He didn't want to lose her. Dexter would risk his life for her children. He would fight to save their relationship after Rita tried to leave him. He would do anything she asked, including stopping for milk during a kill and ending his ritual incomplete to pick up medicine for Harrison, their shared son. Besides Deborah, his sister, there aren't many instances of Dexter choosing somebody else over his kill ritual. Besides the fact that he proposed to her, all of these facts show that Dexter formed a connection with Rita that he never had with any other woman he'd dated before.
I feel you and the kids. You're what makes me real.
But as much as he cared for Rita, Dexter wasn't going to stop his work as a serial killer. He was willing to compromise his kill schedule for her, but not end it. There's no doubt that Rita was worried about him, especially after Harrison was born. She wondered why he was always out so late and why he lied about having a concussion after a horrible car accident. Rita was getting fed up with Dexter's secretive behavior, but he was determined to calm her down and regain her trust. By the time she died, they had finally begun to rekindle their romance. They were planning a honeymoon to re-spark the devotion they once felt towards one another and strengthen their relationship. Unfortunately, on her way to the airport, Rita realized she forgot her ID at home and returned to grab it. Unbeknownst to her, Trinity was waiting inside to kill her as a way to get back at Dexter for interrupting his kill cycle.
I was following my path.
Something that was very sacred to him. It was there that Rita met her end, left to bleed out in a bathtub, and Harrison was left to cry as he sat in a pool of his mother's blood. Dexter was planning to meet them at the honeymoon location the next day, but when he got home after killing Trinity, he called Rita's phone and heard it ringing inside of the house. Then he heard Harrison crying. He ran towards the noise and found them exactly as Arthur had left them. He was devastated and ran to her to try to revive her, but it was no use. She was already dead. He picked Harrison up, exited the bathroom, and called the police. And that was the end of his marriage to Rita. Now let's consider all of the things that may not have come to pass if she just hadn't forgotten her ID that day. After Rita's death at the hands of Trinity, Dexter was lost. Rita served as an anchor for Dexter, and without her presence in his life, he felt adrift. Before her memorial, he ran away, but eventually he returned to speak at the service and care for his children. He also returned to his ritual of vetting, stalking, and killing other killers, and that's what put Boyd Fowler in his sights. Fowler was an employee for the Department of Sanitation in Miami, where he worked in dead animal pickup. But Dexter soon discovered that animals were not the only dead bodies Fowler had been handling. After realizing that Boyd was the last person to rent a moving van that had dried human blood in the back, Dexter knew Fowler was likely a killer. Dexter continued to surveil him until he found solid evidence of his guilt, which came in the form of Boyd visiting the swamp where he dumped his victims' bodies in barrels. That was all Dexter needed to confirm his suspicions and gain the license to kill Fowler. When he finally managed to get Boyd on his table, Dexter didn't realize that he was being watched by the woman meant to be his next victim, Lumen Pierce. After she witnessed him kill Fowler, Lumen was understandably scared of Dexter. Eventually, he earned her trust and convinced her that he was not one of her attackers, but he still needed to get Lumen out of his life to avoid any further complications. He tried to send her back to her family in Minneapolis, but she was determined to stay in Miami and kill the men who had raped and tortured her. She eventually had to enlist the help of Dexter, and soon after that, the two began a romantic relationship. They bonded over the darkness they both felt inside after suffering severe trauma. Dexter developed strong feelings for Lumen, believing that she truly accepted him for what he was, unlike most people. In the past, those who knew Dexter's secret either abused it or rejected him because of it. But Lumen never did. After the death of his wife, a woman he had to consistently lie to and manipulate, Dexter thought he could finally have a relationship that did not require that level of deceit. He trusted Lumen and knew that she would never betray his secret. He looked at her as a partner, not only romantically, but maybe even in killing. But after they eliminated the last member of the Barrel Girls gang, Jordan Chase, Lumen no longer felt the need to kill.
I don't want to.
Then don't. Stay here.
I can't do it anymore. What we've been doing.
You don't have to.
But you do.
She told Dexter that her darkness was gone and that she couldn't stay with him because she knew his would always be there. She planned to return her family in Minneapolis and leave the entire mess behind her for good. Dexter was distraught by this news. He had become emotionally attached to Lumen and he didn't want to see her go. Still, he understood her decision. He was eventually able to move on, but if Rita was never murdered by Trinity, Dexter would have never gone through that emotional upset in the first place. Who knows if he would have even helped Lumen at all if Rita was still alive? He may not have even been in that situation. He would have had a much harder time sneaking around with Lumen to kill the Barrel Girls gang if his wife was still around and concerned over his whereabouts. Without his help, Lumen would have almost certainly been caught by police or killed by one of Chase's thugs. But Lumen isn't the only person whose fate would have been forever changed had Rita survived Trinity's attack. After Trinity killed Rita, Harrison Morgan was found in a pool of his mother's blood. This was reminiscent of how Dexter was found at just 3 years old after his mother was murdered in front of him in a shipping container by the cartel. The trauma that Dexter suffered after he witnessed his mother's death created the darkness inside of him that led him to kill, and he was worried that the same would happen to Harrison. Harrison's first words were "die, die," but he seemed to be developing as a normal child beyond that. Dexter was always worried about Harrison and wanted to see him grow up happily and healthily, but he still continued killing anyway. Even after the many instances that his dark urges led to the death of innocent people, some who he cared for deeply, he couldn't stop. He always worried that his habits would come back to negatively impact his son, but he was incapable of stopping, even to protect Harrison. In fact, in season 6, as Dexter pursued the Doomsday Killer, Travis Marshall, Harrison was almost sacrificed by the killer as part of one of his demented tableaus. Knowing that Dexter was a killer and believing him to be an evil entity, Travis kidnapped Harrison from school and tried to kill him during a solar eclipse in order to bring about the end of the world. His delusions told him that he needed to do so, and thinking that Dexter was the beast mentioned in his old professor's religious writings, Travis figured that his son would be the perfect sacrifice to spur on the end of days. Dexter arrived in time to save Harrison from Travis, but there is a chance that he might have been too late. He could have lost his own son in pursuit of a killer, just like he lost Rita while hunting Trinity. Later, his sister would be killed due to his proximity to another killer, Oliver Saxon, aka the Brain Surgeon. It's almost like he learned nothing from Rita's death. By the end of the original series, after Deb was dead, Dexter had witnessed so many of the people he cared about die due to his recklessness and inability to stop killing that he decided to abandon Harrison altogether and leave him to be raised by Hannah McKay, his then girlfriend, and oddly enough, also another serial killer.
As soon as I do, I'll meet you there, I promise.
I'm gonna miss you.
He didn't want to be responsible for putting either of them in harm's way or screwing Harrison up irreparably, but if Rita had survived, would Dexter have made the same choice? It's possible that he may have still decided to flee Miami after Deb's death, but Harrison would have had a much better life with Rita. When we meet Harrison again in New Blood, he is a very troubled teen who had overcome a drug problem after being effectively orphaned by the age of 13. His adoptive mother, Hannah, died of pancreatic cancer while they were living in Argentina. The original plan was for Hannah, Dexter, and Harrison to live there together to help her avoid rearrest after she had escaped prison. It's weird that Dexter would leave his son with a murderous escaped convict, but with Rita alive, he wouldn't have had to make that choice at all. Rita was a great mother, and she loved Harrison just as much as Astor and Cody, her two kids from her previous marriage to Paul Bennett. If Trinity had never gotten to her, Harrison would have had a safe home with two loving siblings and a stable mother. He wouldn't have had to enter the foster care system after Hannah's death, and he probably wouldn't have hitchhiked to Iron Lake to find Dexter. In Iron Lake, Harrison faced even more trauma. He maimed a classmate to gain attention and adoration from the others. He also found out that his dad was a deranged serial killer. He witnessed and participated in the murder of Kurt Caldwell, a man he had come to trust and look up to. But not until after Kurt tried to kill him in retaliation for Dexter killing his son, Matt Caldwell. Eventually, Harrison was forced to face the fact that his father killed his wrestling coach, Officer Logan, an innocent man who was also a revered police officer in Iron Lake. Harrison would end up shooting Dexter with the intent to kill and fleeing to New York City, all alone once again. He didn't even get the chance to tell his friends or girlfriend goodbye. With Rita in the picture, all of that new trauma could have been avoided. Harrison may have had a bit of unresolved issues having to grow up without a father, but that is nothing compared to the trauma he endured with Rita dead. He most likely would have grown up to be an upstanding, relatively normal adult, but with a bit of therapy, he may have even gotten over the pain of his father leaving them all behind. Rita's life being spared would have no doubt resulted in a much better life for Harrison, but without her, he didn't even stand a chance. Now that Harrison has returned in Dexter Resurrection, we may see him turn it all around, but given the things that he's seen, the things he has done, that is not exactly probable. Rita staying alive would have changed the entire trajectory of Harrison's life, but that's not where her impact ends. If Rita had survived, then some murders could have been avoided completely. Dexter ran away from his life after Rita's death. He figured that Astor, Cody, and Harrison would be better off without him. He took his boat out, but didn't really have a plan of where he was going. When his sister called to try and track him down, he threw his phone into the water and continued on his way. He stopped to fuel up his boat, and while he was at the fueling station, he encountered a particularly crass man known only as Rankin.
Where's the key to the bathroom?
The guy was cursing and making a scene at the register, and when he couldn't get any assistance, he snagged the bathroom key on his own and pushed past Dexter on his way to relieve himself. He used some harsh language towards Dexter, who was already very angry about Rita's death. Dexter knew he shouldn't have followed the man, but his rage was blinding him. He entered the bathroom after Rankin and explained to him that his wife had just been murdered. Rankin didn't respond in a very kind or caring way, saying even more rude things about Dexter and Rita. That was enough to set Dexter off. He pushed the man through the stall door and back through the wall, breaking it. When the man was on the floor, Dexter mercilessly beat him to death with a grappling hook. This kill is particularly noteworthy because it didn't fit Harry's code in any way. Rankin wasn't a killer to Dexter's knowledge, and killing him wasn't necessary to stop Dexter from being caught. If anything, it endangered him because someone could have walked in on him in the act and he could have left traces of the kill all over the bathroom, which was not prepared like one of his traditional kill rooms. Dexter never would have met Rankin if Rita was alive. If she had lived, Rankin would have too. At least Dexter wouldn't have been the one to kill him. And this wasn't the only kill Dexter wouldn't have been able to pull off if Trinity hadn't killed Rita. Andrew Briggs was a man that Dexter killed partially to protect Deb and partially because he was enraged at the time. At the end of season 6, Dexter was in the process of killing Travis Marshall, the Doomsday Killer, when Deb walked in on him. He was able to lie his way out of the situation in the moment, claiming that he just snapped, and Deb decided to help him burn down the church to cover up the evidence of his crime. But after she did, she could sense that something was off about the situation. Dexter had Travis strapped to a table with plastic wrap, like the ice truck killer had done to her. He also had a set of knives with him already, and he wasn't dressed like he normally would have been to conduct a forensic sweep. She started to put the pieces together and eventually tore apart his place to get to the bottom of what he was hiding. There she found his blood slides and a lot of other suspicious items, including the knives which he had claimed belonged to Travis. Deb knew then that he was the Bay Harbor Butcher, but she never turned him in. By that time, she was lieutenant of homicide, and Maria LaGuerta was promoted to captain, following the forced retirement of Captain Thomas Matthews. The Doomsday Killer was a major case for the Miami Metro Homicide Department, and while they were investigating his murder scene, Captain LaGuerta found a bloodslide that matched the MO of the Bay Harbor Butcher. LaGuerta never believed that Dokes was the butcher, and now she was more determined than ever to clear his name and find the real killer. Eventually, she was able to narrow the suspects down to one name, Dexter Morgan. She arrested and interrogated him, but it didn't stick. She still wouldn't let up, and now Dexter knew that she was on to him, which would also incriminate Deborah. As a result, he planned to kill Maria to get her off his back once and for all. Before he had a chance, Deb showed up to try to talk him out of it. But when LaGuerta woke up and saw her there, Deb made a life-altering choice. She shot and killed Maria to save her brother, but she was so emotionally scarred by doing so that she quit the force and started work as a private investigator instead. In the course of her work as a PI, Deb was sent to track down some stolen jewels that her boss wanted recovered. She was pretty sure that she was on to the guy that did it, a drug dealer and thief named Andrew Briggs. He was planning on fencing the jewels himself for a big payout, but he'd never get the chance. The fence who was claimed to be interested in buying the loot was actually a hitman who planned to kill Briggs and steal the jewels instead. Dexter got wind of this and tracked Deb down to the motel where she was holed up with Briggs. When he arrived to warn her and get her out of harm's way, Deb was still incredibly angry and depressed, and she didn't want to go with Dexter. Briggs came to the door, confronted Dexter, and attacked him when he tried to take Deb by force. Already in a rage, Dexter shoved Briggs back into the motel room and stabbed him in the abdomen, killing him instantly. So what does this all have to do with Rita's death? Well, the only reason Andrew Briggs was near Deb was because she left the police force after killing LaGuerta. The only reason she killed LaGuerta was because LaGuerta was on to Dexter. The only reason LaGuerta was on to Dexter was because she found that blood slide at Travis Marshall's crime scene, and the only reason she found that was because Deb arrived at the scene and interrupted Dexter's ritual, causing him to drop the blood slide in the chaos. And why did Deb show up to the church that night? Well, she planned to tell Dexter that she was in love with him. As disturbing as that is, it would have never happened if Rita was still alive. Even if Deborah did mistakenly believe herself to be in love with Dexter, she never would have told him that if Rita was still alive. Rita was Dexter's wife, and if she was still around, there is no way Deb would have tried to undermine his marriage with her disturbing truth. Without her walking in on Dexter in the act, Travis's blood slide would have been safely hidden away with the rest of Dexter's trophies, and Maria would have never begun investigating the Bay Harbor Butcher again. LaGuerta would still be alive, and neither Dexter nor Deborah would have ever even met Andrew Briggs. Sure, the hitman may have still gotten to him, but Dexter would have had nothing to do with his death. Trinity killing Rita created a butterfly effect, one that led to the death of Maria LaGuerta, Andrew Briggs, and the hitman who came to kill him, who Deb eventually killed all on her own after the two had a violent altercation over the jewels. But there is still one more noteworthy death that came as a result of Rita's death at Trinity's hand. Clint McKay was the abusive and manipulative father of Hannah McKay. We know that Hannah was a woman that Dexter started dating after his relationship with Lumen Pierce ended. Hannah was a serial killer in her own right who had evaded prison after going on a crime and killing spree at the age of 15. Her criminal boyfriend, Wayne Randall, convinced her to run away with him one night, and from there they traveled the country, stealing and killing with reckless abandon. After they were caught, her young age allowed her to avoid jail, and she was sent to a juvenile detention center for a few years instead, while Wayne was given a life sentence. After she was released from the detention center, she went on about her life as normal, eventually opening a greenhouse in Miami. Hannah didn't really try to reestablish her relationship with her family, but her father would come around every so often to get money from her. The only difference the last time he visited her was that Dexter was in Hannah's life then. He could tell that Hannah didn't want to give her father the large sum of money he was asking for. She said that she was going to do it anyway, just to get him to go away again and to get him off her back. Hannah also didn't want to upset her father, who she knew had a violent temper. One day, Clint scared Hannah and destroyed her greenhouse after she decided that she wouldn't give him the money after all. He verbally attacked Hannah in front of Dexter, and as a result, she changed her mind and decided to just give him the money so he'd leave as soon as possible. Clint lied to Hannah and claimed he was planning to use the money to start a business. But during a tense back and forth with Dexter, he revealed that he actually needed it to clear up his gambling debts. He also threatened to leak information about Hannah's murders to a popular true crime writer, Sal Price, if she didn't fork over the cash. If he did that, Hannah could be investigated and sent back to prison. That was enough for Dexter to decide to take Clint out to protect his life with Hannah. One night, Dexter tricked Clint into meeting up to get the money, knocked him out, and took him out on his boat. There, Dexter stabbed Clint, killing him and threw him over the side of the boat. But if Rita was alive, that would have never happened. Dexter would never have been in a relationship with Hannah to begin with. He would have never met Clint or felt inclined to kill him. After all, Clint was not a killer. He did not fit Harry's code, and Dexter would have no personal investment in getting rid of him. Again, Trinity killing Rita set off a chain of events that led to the death of a man who would have otherwise lived to see another day. Clint McKay was an awful person and an even worse father, but if Rita was still alive and married to Dexter, there is no chance he would have died the way he did. The Trinity killer murdering Rita really created an entire whirlwind of negative consequences that would have otherwise never come to pass.